My name is Laurie Engle, and I live in apartment 766. I lived for the last 28 years in Santa Fe, New Mexico, where I went to study Chinese medicine, and then I went on to practice acupuncture and herbology for 28 years. I loved living in the high desert and the community there, the sun shining almost every day. Really was a great place for me to live. But there came a time when it was clearly time to move closer to family. Yes, I moved to Freedom Village. I knew Freedom Village because my father had lived here for 10 years, Bill Engle. So, yeah, and he absolutely loved it here. So I was familiar with Freedom Village, and there were a number of reasons that I chose Freedom Village as the place to come to in Holland. So many things being offered under one roof was one of the big things, especially moving back to Holland, Michigan winters, which this winter it has proved to be a very good choice. Also, the sense of community here, and there's a vitality here. There's an energy in the air that people are friendly, and more than friendly, they want to be active, they want to participate for the most part. Also, because of the various levels of care that are available here, the walkability to downtown and to Hope College. So good number of reasons, and the staff here I feel is outstanding. So I had migraines for much of my life, and finally someone said to me, "Have you ever had acupuncture?" And I hadn't. I tried it, and it helped so much. So that is really what took me to study Chinese medicine and to learn how to do acupuncture for myself and herbology as well. It made sense to me. It really addresses the whole person, the whole being. And I really enjoyed being able to give treatments. I was especially good at treating people with headaches. And so who knew I would end up being there for 28 years, but it was a great chapter of my life. So before moving out west, I worked at Hope College in the International Education Office, where I advised international students. And while I was working there, I also participated in the Great Lakes Jerusalem program, taking students to Jerusalem and actually all over the country, and introducing them to the Palestinian-Israeli conflict from an even-handed perspective, really from a peace and justice perspective. We would go around the country with an Israeli professor, visiting various sites and hearing history from that professor. And then we would go around the country and to some of the same sites with a Palestinian professor and hear the history from that perspective. It was a fascinating, amazing, engaging program. And I had the amazing privilege of being part of that program 2 different times. And it really impacted my life. And my children went one of the times when they were, I think it was 11 and 14. And it really was an important learning aspect for all of us. Okay, so I have a son who lives in Chicago with his 2 kids, and I have a daughter who lives in the Upper Peninsula with her husband and son, and her daughter actually lives here in Holland on 15th Street. So I also have a brother and a sister who live here in Holland. So it really was, coming back to family. And while my kids aren't here, at least they're in driving distance. So I was born and raised in Alpena, Michigan, the Lake Huron side, and my parents moved us to Holland, all seven of us. Actually, we started in Zealand when I was going into eighth grade, a real shock to the system, as you can imagine. I went through high school, graduated high school. Meanwhile, I fell in love with a very handsome Dutchman, Bill Van Eenenum, and we had 10 years together. And then he died in an airplane crash at a very young age. Sometime after that, I took the kids and went, never having been out of the country, went to Egypt, landing in Cairo. It's a little overwhelming. And we were supposed to go to the Sudan, that was the plan, and meet up with some missionary friends of my in-laws. Well, we were not able to get visas to go to the Sudan, so there I was in Cairo with two kids, not speaking the language. I could hardly understand the English that people were speaking to us at the time because it was all very disorienting. However, I'm an adventurer, and so when it came down to it, I said, okay, we're going to do this, and we're going to make the best of being in Cairo and being in Egypt. It was an amazing, amazing experience, and for 2 months, the kids and I were travelers in Egypt. We did get to the Sudan eventually, and then we went back to Egypt before coming home. In that time, I really fell in love with the people and the culture, the language, the food, and that is what really inspired me to go on and do Middle East studies and even study Arabic. So a couple years later, I took the kids and moved to Washington, D.C., enrolled at Georgetown, and started a program there. But meanwhile, I had met Larry Penrose, who was a history professor at Hope College. I ended up coming back to Holland and living in Holland, eventually marrying Larry, and we had 10 years together, and then we divorced. I enjoy reading. I really enjoy good music, and when I hear good music, it often makes me want to dance or sing. I wasn't gifted with a wonderful voice, but I can make joyful noise. And I love doing jigsaw puzzles, walking, doing various activities, and dining with other people, socializing in general. So I've been to the cardio drumming class a couple of times, and I absolutely love it. Especially doing the class to music is really, really great. I just have to work on not getting too carried away. I feel like I'm in a rock band when I'm doing the class, which is fun. And I've gotten involved with a couple of small groups, which is really nice, getting to know people on a little more personal level. And I hope to be able to do more exercise classes. And yeah, just being an active resident here at Freedom Village.
My name is Rod Hill. I'm in apartment 708. I moved here from Allegan, which is just south of here, but that I'd only been there 20 years. So been all over southern Michigan before that. You know, what's interesting is that as a kid, I grew up on a farm that had a river running through it. And every spring, when the ice went out on the river, we would get a flooded pasture, so to speak. And my dad, who had a bit of a jokester in him, would usually come in from milking the cows in the morning during the spring of the year, and he would announce to my sisters and my mother, you know, if that river comes up another 14 feet, we're going to be underwater. It was a regular thing that happened every spring. Usually at that time of year, we also lived with mud. If we wanted to get off the farm to go to town, you had to do it early in the morning while the mud was still frozen. Other than that, if you tried to come home in the afternoon, forget it, you were stuck. So, I'm not a stranger to water. No, not at all. I've been a widower for about 5-6 years, and my children don't live nearby. One's in Ohio, one's in Minnesota. And so we started talking about where should Dad go. I looked at places in Minnesota and in Ohio and even in Illinois as a kind of halfway place for both of them. And after a lot of conversation, we decided it would be best for me to stay in a place where I was comfortable instead of having to move to a place that was new and different. And so we looked at a number of places, Holland, Kalamazoo, Grand Rapids, and this just seemed to fit the needs that I had. Arlene and I were married for almost 61 years, within 15 days or so. I have 2 children. One lives in Owatonna, Minnesota, with her husband. They have 2 children, one of whom lives near Denver, Colorado, and the other is in Brooklyn, New York. I'm most proud of her. She just finished a year's sabbatical in Taiwan, having won a Fulbright scholarship, fellowship. So she spent a year living in Taiwan and now is back here living in New York. And then I have a son who lives in South Vienna, Ohio, which is about as big as a thumbprint. There's no Vienna, Ohio. There's no North Vienna, Ohio. There's just South Vienna. Its sole claim to fame is that there's a high school there. But that's it. He is employed, or still employed, by Nationwide Insurance as a troubleshooting consulting accountant. I don't have any idea what he does, except for the fact that he has to work very hard in the first quarter of the year with year-end stuff. They have a daughter who lives also near Columbus in Grove City, Ohio. She's married, and she works for a company that I think she's doing some accounting, but I don't know. And her husband is an accountant also, so it kind of runs in the family. I lived in a home with 3 other musicians, and they at one point decided that I should learn how to play the piano. That didn't last too long, because I had 3 teachers, and it would be a chorus that would go up like, "Dad, you didn't play that correctly." And so I quit. I started out my first 20 years or so. I was a Evangelical Lutheran Church in America pastor. I had 3 parishes in southern Michigan, one of which was in Allegan. Another one was in Kentwood, a suburb of Grand Rapids. And the third, and I think the most enjoyable, was downtown Flint. I spent a few years there before I was recruited to go to work with Lutheran Social Services of Michigan, today called Samaritas. And I spent about 20 years with them as a part of the administrative team. Most interesting job was I was the internal auditor. So everybody's friend and nobody's friend all at the same time. And it wasn't just financial, it was program audit also. So I traveled the whole state, or the lower peninsula of Michigan, visiting the various facilities we had. My wife had a wild, she started out as an elementary music teacher when we lived in Davenport, Iowa. And then when we were in Grand Rapids the first time, for I had a internship assignment there, she taught in the East Grand Rapids system, again in elementary music. And then when we had children, she stopped doing that, but later on she was teaching piano privately, had a number of students for that, and then at one point she had a muffin business, creating and making and delivering muffins to smaller grocery stores on the east side of Detroit when we lived in Detroit. And for a long time she was a volunteer. She was a volunteer program person with the children's part of the hospital in Flint when we lived there. And she developed a program for kids that received quite a bit of attention. So I think that's, well, let's see what else. That was about it, what she did. Right now, my major hobby is counted cross stitch. If you visited my apartment, you would find one wall covered with counted cross stitch projects that I've worked on. So that's a major hobby. When I was younger, I did a lot of woodworking. I have some of that stuff with me. Most of that disappeared in the process of moving. I also am a fan of Major League Baseball. Just renewed my annual subscription to MLB, so I have access to just about every baseball game that is played in the major league. The other hobby I have is reading. My college major was English literature, and so I have done that kind of follow-up on that all the time. Well, one of the fun things that I'm involved with is the pre-med program at Hope College. I have met a young man. We hit it off almost immediately. He is a very sharp student. Maybe we hit it off so well because not only is he preparing for a medical career, but his minor in college is philosophy. So we have had some very interesting conversation. That's the funnest thing that I've done since I've been here.